Hello, BeautyCon. How are we doing? All right. I hope you got your energy brewing after this break because we have a really good conversation coming up. Hmm. So, my name is Daisy, and I am your host today. And our next panel is very interesting. It's actually one of my favorite beauty influencers. We all have something to say, but communicating is clearly a confident kind of skill. And so we are excited to have Annie Papoola here on stage with us with our moderator, Sophia Dennis. So please give a warm welcome to the ladies. Come on, show them some love.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Thank you guys so much for joining us for this wonderful conversation. I am joined by content creator Annie Papoola. Annie, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I am a beauty, fashion, lifestyle, travel content creator. I have been creating content full time for a little over 3 years, but before I was a content creator, I was a teacher and then I went to law school, graduated from law school, passed the bar, and then made a quick pivot into doing this full time. So, really excited to be here, chatting it up and talking about all of my learnings along the way.
Absolutely. So, one thing that I think is super interesting about content creation and even just being able to get a message across is being able to talk to people and to get what you want to get out to them and ensure that they're understanding what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah.
Communication is the most important aspect. And when it comes to content creation, you only have so much time to get a message across.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about the importance of communication and expressing yourself in your career as a content creator?
Absolutely. So, as a content creator, you're trying to get everyone's attention. And you're fighting against an algorithm, you're fighting against you're competing for people's screen time. So, it's really important to be able to grab people's attention. And I think that's why a lot of times, like, you'll see people talking about a hook and like how you can hook people's attention essentially. But I also think the biggest thing, communication is important because everybody is trying to convey an idea, and the people who are successfully able to convey that idea will grow a community because people will know what to expect for them. People will know that they can come to you and that they will laugh, or that they can come to you and they will learn something, or they will be educated, or they'll feel inspired. And so I think if you have an idea of what it is you want to convey and you can effectively communicate it, that is what is going to make the difference and allow you to build a community and grow online.
Yeah, absolutely. So, some of you may know Annie was an attorney working in big law and has made a transition into being a full time content creator. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and why you made that decision?
Yeah, so I never had plans to be a full time content creator. I went to law school, and the plan was always to be a lawyer. But I grew my community and I grew in partnerships with brand deals and things like that. And I worked at a place that wasn't too fond of doing both the content creation and working at the law firm. And they essentially gave me an ultimatum that I would have to stop posting online, stop doing the brand deals. And I wasn't happy with that. I felt like my heart wasn't in the corporate big law. I think my heart might have been in something more public interest, but a girl had student loans at the time and all of that. So I wanted to, for the first time ever, wanted to follow my heart and follow my passion, which was talking to people online and sharing stories and making people feel seen. And so at the end of that week, I said, thank you so much for helping me make this decision that I probably would not have made on my own, because I would have never just left up and left. And that is essentially what allowed me to transition into content creation full time. Thank you.
That's a really big step and something that I think a lot of people would not be as courageous to do, especially given the amount of time that you put into becoming a lawyer and going to law school. But I think that that's something that really sets you apart as a content consumer and somebody who's watched your content for I think all 3 years that you've been doing this. One thing that I thought was always very interesting and gravitating about you is the fact that you had so many things going on and you found a way to one still produce content, still be in law school, graduate law school, step into the corporate world, all while still showcasing beauty and how you show up for yourself and things that people often deem as superficial. So I'd love to know a little bit about how you've been able to do that, to turn that on its head and say, hey, I'm a content creator, I create beauty content, but I still have thoughts, I still have opinions, I still care about things, I'm still an intellectual person, and also the things that I'm doing are intellectual.
Yeah, that I feel like has been the whole essence of why I wanted to create content to begin with. I felt that there had been this notion that if you care about taking care of yourself, if you care about presenting yourself in a certain way, well, then you can't also care about issues in the world, or that you can't care about education, or that you can't actually want to know things and learn things. And so for me, it was very important right out the gate. Like when I started law school, I was like, I don't even want to talk about law. I want to talk about like how I'm maintaining my, wellness routines, and how I'm, still finding time to do my makeup before a big event, or how I'm looking forward to the big events in law school because I get to pick out a cool dress. And so for me, I feel like beauty routines and fashion routines, they are embedded in our everyday, right? Like whether you want to acknowledge them or not. So if you're coming here, you're choosing an outfit, right? Everybody is choosing what they have to wear every single day. And that decision is guided by where you're going, what's appropriate for the environment, what you're going to be doing there. Everyone's making a decision about their beauty, whether they want to wear makeup or not, how they want to style their hair or not. And so for me, it was really just about pinpointing those moments in every single part of my law school journey and experience. And I feel like as women, as Black women, we are always thinking about those things. How do I present myself in the workplace, or when I'm out with my friends, or when I'm going to church versus staying at home when I'm traveling? So I think it really just spoke to the fact that these routines exist in everything that we're doing. And so let's bring that to the forefront, while also talking about the books that we're reading, and what we are what we're seeing on the news, and those sorts of things.
Absolutely. It's like intellectualizing this thing that people deem as so superficial, which, in my opinion, is really rooted in misogyny because it is a world that's dominated by women. One thing that I didn't realize or maybe didn't remember was that you were a teacher before you went to law school. And as we talk about communication and the importance of expressing yourself, when you're a kid, obviously, seeing teachers and how they communicate to you is sometimes some of like the most important aspects of your life, and some of the most important learning lessons is being in a classroom. So, how has being a teacher impacted your whole career and just yourself in general?
I think people always, they know that I went to law school and that's what they gravitate towards. But I think being a teacher was hands down the most important experience that I've had in my professional journey. And it has always related to every single thing that I've done after that. Being a teacher is being a public speaker. So, in terms of like how I got my training to speak publicly, I was teaching 12 and 13-year-olds. I taught seventh grade history. They are tough critics. They're going to let you know when they're not interested in what you're saying. You're going to see it all over their face and their body language if they don't care about what you have to say. And so you have to adjust immediately. You can have a plan for what you want to say to a group of students and realize that it's not landing and that no one's really understanding it. And you have to pivot and think about, okay, how can I make this lesson a little bit more engaging, or how can I change what I'm saying so that they understand me? So being a teacher is hands down the most important experience that I've had in terms of developing communication skills, in terms of developing expression. And also, like, it was an opportunity. I taught in East Harlem in New York, and it was an opportunity to also be a reflection to them of what's possible, and to show that there are people who care about them and who would come back into the community and to teach them as well. But I think it was absolutely hands down the most important experience that I've had in terms of communication, in terms of expression, in terms of being quick on your feet. So I cherish that experience hands down, and shout out to the educators. And I always say, like, it's not something to look down on. It is such a hard job, and it is such valuable experience.
It's also one of the most important jobs is being a teacher. Can you talk a little bit about how you I guess you almost like step back into that role as what people deem like internet's big sister, right? You're
Mm.
teaching people how to do their makeup, how to do certain things. Can you talk a little bit about that responsibility and when you realize like, oh, I'm I'm really teaching people a lot of things that they might not have access to.
Very important PSA. That is important. Yes. So I would say, remind me of the question again.
Oh, the question was transitioning from being a teacher to now being like the internet's teacher,
Oh yes.
the
Okay.
internet's big sister.
Internet's big sister came back to me. Cool. Um, for one, I started to realize, and that's another thing. Like, it's very important to pay attention to what people are asking you to help guide your decisions about what you choose to share with an online audience. And I realized that more and more people were asking me questions about, mentorship or about my experience or about learnings. And that was when I realized, like, oh, people want to hear something from me. And this is an opportunity to share what I've learned. So thinking about, I even started a series. Like I don't have a little sister. I don't have any sisters actually. I have three brothers. And thinking about, but if I had a little sister, what would she want to know about going to law school or about being a teacher or about traveling on her own, solo travel? So anything that I could think of that like someone might need advice on, or people that have asked me for advice on certain things, I realized this is an opportunity to share it. And it's actually a great way to do so because I can't speak to everyone one on one. I can't have mentorship circles with 100 people at once. And so it was my way of still realizing like, oh, you can still offer people advice and insight, but do it online, which has an unimaginable reach.
Absolutely. And there are so many people who are interested in having those conversations. So, can you speak a little bit to how you create content that starts conversations as opposed to just, putting out a statement?
Ooh, the biggest thing for me starting conversations, I journal. I journal a lot. And I think journaling is a really great way to be reflective about your own experience. And a lot of what I do online is sharing my own experience. And then the part where can start a conversation is by asking people a question, right? Like, or making people feel seen, or making people feel a part of a conversation. So instead of saying like, this is what I did and this is how I do things, thinking about, has anyone else ever had this feeling, or has anyone else like been in this moment, or is it just me? Like that's how you start a conversation and you pull people in. The same principles that apply when you're talking to someone one on one, right? Like sometimes how it is when you're talking to someone and then you start to realize this person hasn't asked me a single question, or this person hasn't actually like said anything that would prompt me to engage. They're just rambling off and saying their own things. The same thing applies online, right? Like give an opportunity for people to jump in and say, "Yup, I had the same thing happen to me." And it's my favorite thing when I see people in the comments sharing their own stories, getting personal as well, because it's made me feel like, "Oh, okay, I've set something up here where even if I'm not on my phone and not looking, like there's a conversation happening long after I hit that post button."
I love that. And that really speaks to the longevity when it comes to content creation, really creating a space where it's not just a voice on a stage or a voice on a screen, but it's an active, interactive conversation between you and your audience and also like new audiences. As your audience has grown, have you noticed your communication style and the way that you communicate yourself online change?
Ooh, yes and no. So I am someone who I like to make sure that my point has gotten across. And social media platforms do not reward like you explaining yourself. They don't reward long videos. And so it's looking for say something in 30 seconds, say something in 15 seconds. And I'm someone that's like, I don't want my words to be misconstrued. I don't want people to think something that I didn't say because I just wanted to condense it into 15 seconds. So I still will do my long 3-minute videos if it means that I'm saying everything that I want to say. Because I think the biggest thing is if we're going to disagree, if we're going to have discourse, if we're going to agree or whatever, we can only do that from a place of understanding exactly what each other's point is. And if I wasn't able to fully get my point across, then there's no reason to be going back and forth or no reason to be saying I don't agree or I think this that. So I will post a 3-minute video, I will post a 5-minute video if it means me fully getting my point across. That being said though, I think as my community has grown, I am more open to responding to people and having people's own ideas also impact what I decide to share as well. I still have boundaries for sure, but I think it's really important to make people feel included in the conversation by responding to them and by, allowing what they want or what they want to see impact what you share as well.
That's amazing. And even as you're talking, I'm thinking like I don't know if anybody watches Love Island, but there's a moment in Love Island where Melanie says to Anaya, you're a grand woman. And Annie, you are a grand woman. You are
Thank you.
incredibly polished, incredibly composed. But I'd love to know, how do you balance being polished with being authentic online and showing people maybe, a little bit more of things that you may think are controversial, or things that you're concerned might not go over well?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I tell people all the time. It's funny. I had a friend I recently traveled with, and she was like, "Yeah, someone was talking to me, and they were like, and he seems so serious." And the friend was like, "That is hilarious because this is the most unserious person that I know." And I think that's real, right? Like, I think social media is, whichever way you cut it, it's performance, it's performative to the extent that you are picking up a phone and pressing play, and then like you're putting on a show. It's a performance. And I am someone, I went to law school, I was a teacher, so I always had to be mindful of who was watching. And on top of that, like when I was a kid, I was one of those kids that was like, I'm gonna be president of the United States. Like I'm gonna, I wanna be a politician and all that type of stuff. So that is always in my mind, and that definitely guides my content. But sometimes I'm just like, every now and then I'm just like, let's see where it lands. Or the opportunity to go live. I feel like when people are afraid to go live on social media platforms sometimes because like you get the real thing, but I think that is a good thing, especially for people who are very mindful of, being polished, of a digital footprint, of wanting to work with brands that are maybe more corporate in nature and more traditional in nature, because that's really what's guiding the balance as well. I think going live is an opportunity to like have people see you in your natural habitat, to have people see you like quick thinking and talking like, in response to their immediate question. So I think that is an opportunity. But also sometimes I'm just like, oh, like let me just set up a camera and forget that it's even there. And I think long form content like YouTube is also a great opportunity because you get to see, I share more on YouTube honestly because it feels like a smaller audience and smaller community. And I think that just the fact that it's long form gives an opportunity to share more that people might not get from a 30-second soundbite.
That's super interesting, and it makes me really think about the fact that different platforms can almost be like different countries or like different digital societies, where what's culturally accepted on TikTok might not be culturally accepted on YouTube, or the type of video that you would post on TikTok or the type of things you would talk about on TikTok you might not talk about on Instagram. Can you speak to how you develop your audiences across different platforms and the types of content that you focus on showcasing on each?
Yes. So in the beginning, I started on Instagram, and my goal on Instagram was to talk about beauty and fashion content because that was my hobby outside of law school. I was like, I don't want to talk about law. I don't want to talk about those things because, I need something that I do for fun. And that was beauty and fashion. And in that way, Instagram, we know it, was always that polished, that prim and proper, the aesthetic videos. Started off with the filters, then it went into, a perfect grid. And I remember when people were choosing what photos they would post based on how aesthetic their whole grid would look that whole time period. And then TikTok comes along and kind of disrupts all of that. And they're like, nobody's looking at your grid. You're just seeing each video as it comes. And as a result, it rewarded authenticity. It rewarded you being yourself. It rewarded dances, and it rewarded thought pieces, and it rewarded essentially like doing whatever you could to make people feel something or grab their attention. And so in that way, when I got onto TikTok, I was like, I don't think the whole beauty and fashion thing is gonna land here in the same way unless you're doing something. Oh, they got freebies going out there.
Some going on over there.
Unless you're doing something that's really shocks the senses. So I remember there was a creator who would douse foundation on her face, and that was what grabbed people's attention. I was like, I'm not doing that. So that was when I leaned into more of a story. I looked around and I was like, what is it that less people can say that they are doing, or less people can say that can even talk about? And that was where law school came into the picture. And I was like, there are not a lot of Black women on this app talking about their experience in law school. And I think there are plenty of women who don't have access to anyone in these spaces. So let me share about that. YouTube is completely different in the sense that it is it's high effort, but also very high reward. People who are on YouTube, because they are watching your 30-minute, 40-minute vlogs, it takes a lot from them, but as a result, they are engaged. They are way more engaged. And so I feel like I can be more intimate in what I choose to share because they are so engaged and they're so loyal that they guard that information and they almost kind of like feel like they're a part of a club. Like, oh, well, I knew this on YouTube. Like, you guys are talking over here on TikTok, but we already covered this on YouTube. And so for that reason, I feel like I can go more in depth, but also I can play around more with how I choose to tell my stories. And so I tend to be a little bit more cinematic and I might mirror a TV show or more do more film style content creation on YouTube.
I love that. So you're able to be a little bit more intimate with your audience, dive a little bit deeper, connect in a different way on on YouTube, but then on TikTok it's a little bit more of the fast pace. Here's the advice. This is what you need to hear. Keep it moving. So another thing that you talked about a little bit earlier on is when you decided to leave your job because you had obviously a wonderful community that was growing, but I also assume a lot of interest and commercial opportunities. Can you talk a little bit about some of your first brand partnerships and how you've transitioned your, I guess, business to match that?
Yeah, so in my early days, I was excited about any opportunity. So there were like partnerships with companies that I don't even think still exist or I don't even think were legitimate at that point in time. But, they offered me like, oh, 10% commission for everything that you sold. So I'm out here modeling their sets and saying like, go buy from this place, knowing full well like I wasn't necessarily going to buy from that place myself, but it was exciting because it felt like it gave you the stamp of approval for being a content creator or an influencer. Now I have a team, I have management, I have PR, I have all of those things, but also I have experience. And so I think a lot more critically about why it is I'm choosing to engage with a brand. Is that brand like already incorporated into the life that I live, or is it completely new? I'm really, really not someone to do a skincare partnership if I've never used any product from the brand and don't do that. Same thing with makeup. It's just like whether we post about it or not, my philosophy is whether we post about it or not, brands are incorporated into our lives, right? Like you have your favorite detergent, you have your favorite foundation, you have your favorite fragrances. Like we are using brands. And I think the key is for you to develop your influence, to develop your community, to grow that, but so that you share more about what you already use. It's not necessarily the case that you should be doing a one size fits all and a grab for any and as many brand partnerships that you can have. It's okay, you've built this platform, you have grown a community. Let's talk about the things that are already in your life and that were already there. And that's really my philosophy when it comes to partnerships.
I love that. And it speaks to the fact that you're building an authentic community of people that can trust you in the same way that they would trust, their older sister. Can you talk a little bit about how obviously your community really trusts you, but when it comes to putting your life online, there are obviously a lot of aspects that you may want to keep private. How do you determine what things to share and what to keep to yourself?
Yeah, I have really strong boundaries. Um, my number one mantra, the thing that I say is I don't post what I don't invite commentary on. That has stayed the same over the years. So if I don't want people talking about my family, I'm not gonna post my family. If I don't want people talking about who I'm dating or how I'm choosing to date, I'm not gonna post that. Because whether you like it or not, or whether you agree or not, like people will say, "Oh, but you post online, so you're open to it." I don't agree with that, right? Like I think if you wouldn't say something to someone in person, which a lot of people, the comments that they leave, they wouldn't say in person if they were having a conversation with someone, then you shouldn't say it online. However, the truth of the matter is people will say what they want. And if it is going to bother you, like I'm self aware enough to know if someone says something crazy about my mom or my brothers, it is going to bother me. And they are going to go on with their day. And I'm going to sit here huffing and puffing and it's going to affect me. Let's remove it from the picture altogether. So I don't post what I don't invite commentary on. But also, I find that in choosing what stories I want to share, I also ask myself if I'm like done experiencing it or if I'm done processing it. Because I can tell a whole bunch of stories about things that I'm currently going through. And it's like, I'm not in a position to talk about it yet because I haven't figured out what the point of this all is in my life or what the lesson is. So I've a lot of times shared stories from high school or shared stories from college or talked about my past experiences as a teacher or as a law student because I'm like, okay, this story feels complete. I can share about it so that someone in this position can see where I came out on the other side. So making sure that I'm kind of done experiencing something or done processing is also really important for choosing what I decide to share online.
That's really important. I think for a lot of people, just putting stuff out there online, I think you're sometimes met with very, very odd and strange people where like you may post something and you might not think anything of it, and then there are people who are like saying really weird things. Like I saw that you did a post recently where you were like, "I'm not sharing my brother's faces anymore because girls are in my DMs asking me to hook them up with my little brother," and that's weird. So how do you decide what stories are worth showcasing and how to basically storyboard your content and tell the stories about whether it be your experiences in big law, your experiences in the industry, or just what you're working on in general?
Ooh, I'm really big on purpose in everything that I do. I'll ask myself, what's the purpose of this? Is it to help someone? Is it to, on the negative side of things, is it just to bring attention to myself? Sometimes people's purpose is tied to views. I don't want to be in that position, but sometimes, it is a job. You do want the numbers to be there and to be reflected. And so sometimes people might think about that as well. And so I, have thought about things sometimes. I might even sit down to film and will want to film something and think like, what am I doing this for? Like, what is the reason? Am I doing this because I think it'll get views, or am I doing this because I was searching for reviews on this particular product and I saw no one with dark skin who was talking about it? This might be helpful to someone because I would have wanted to see the same thing. So that's something that I even think about when I'm thinking about what beauty products to review and post reviews about. Like, oh, I've seen a ton of people reviewing this product. None of them have been dark skinned. I know a lot of women in my community have similar complexion to me, and this would be helpful to them, and it'll make them feel seen as well. So I really do want to add to a space. I want to help uplift, and I want to be helpful above all else.
So you mentioned you've been a content creator for 3 years now. At what point did you realize like, oh, this is something, like this is going to be something for me?
Yeah, I had that realization this summer after I graduated law school. So if you don't know, you graduate law school, say in like April, May, June in the spring. In July, the last Tuesday and Wednesday in July, you take the bar exam, at least in New York. In between that May time period and that July time period, everyone's pretty much studying. Um, and then if you work in big law by October or September, you start work. And I remember talking to my mom thinking, my last loan disbursement came in January. That took me through to May. And I have the option to start work in September or October. And I was nervous. I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it to September without any money from a job. That was the longest period of time that I had gone not working, and I was like, I have to move, I have to furnish an apartment, I want to travel. And so I was thinking about starting work earlier, and I remember her saying like, you have the rest of your life to work, take 1 month additional. And I was like, okay, I'll take the risk. And I did that whole entire summer technically operating as a full-time content creator, and I was fine. I had moved, I had furnished my apartment, I went on a trip to Bali, like I did all of the things, and I was like, oh, I could go a couple more months without actually like going to my I was like, oh, I'm fine. Like I am good. And so to me, that experience is what set me up to make the decision that I made the following year to leave, because I already knew I had the framework and I had the income there to not miss my law firm job when I, had to make big life decisions and had huge expenses at the time. So that experience of operating as a full-time content creator, not depending on that job for income, opened my eyes and made me realize, oh, this isn't just casual cash. This is a business that I'm operating.
That's wonderful, and I think it's really cool that you got like this basically like trial run to pressure test whether or not this was going to be the thing for you. So obviously you've grown a humongous platform and a humongous audience. When did you real like was there ever like a surreal moment where you were like, "Oh, like people are noticing me in the streets. Like I'm kind of popular."
Ooh. I don't know if there was a specific instance, but one of my high school friends, well, my friends are actually really good at calling it out for me. We went to lunch once, and she moved away from New York, so she was back in town. We went to lunch, and it was raining outside, random neighborhood that we're in, and someone stops me and like is like, "I love your content," da 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 da, da. And I'm just like, whoa, that's crazy. But then I also turned to my friend and I was like, I'm so glad you saw that because like I don't think anyone would believe me if I told them about that experience. Fast forward like a year later, she comes back and we go to a block party in Brooklyn and like she took videos and she kept count every single time when someone would come up and like say like, oh, I really love your content. And for me, like that what I would say was the big moment where I was like, oh shoot, like my life is different and this is a different experience. I remember one morning it taught me I can't leave my house looking busted anymore. Because one morning I had a rough night. Even when I was working at my law firm, had a rough night. Went to the Chick-fil-A for breakfast, which is also how I know I was having a rough night. Because like I was at Chick-fil-A for breakfast, looking crazy, head down, whatever, and someone's like, "Any? Can I take a picture?" And I was just like, "Wow, I cannot believe that that's where things are now." So I don't know. I think it's also just a testament to being consistent online because I never would have imagined that I would be in that position at all.
That's so amazing. And it's so wonderful to be a witness and a consumer of your content and to see how much you've grown and the way that your community and audiences and people just in general gravitate towards you. And thank you so much for joining us here today. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
Um, I don't think so. I think thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. So yeah, this was fun. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.